Welcome to 55.5 ITV. I'm your host, Jimmy Ma, and we have a very special guest in the studio with us today. Candidate for mayor, Bill King.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks for having me.
Bill, it's good to have you here. I know your schedule is very busy now. This is the tail end of the campaign. It's been a very busy year for you, Bill. Now, your campaign's focus is back to basics, is how to get back to doing great things for the city of Houston. How do you plan to accomplish that when you do become mayor?
Well, I think what's happened with this city administration we've had for the last 6 years is they've taken their eye off the ball. We organize city government for a few basic fundamental things. Things like making sure we build and maintain our streets, garbage is picked up, water and sewer works, the police department's out solving crimes and patrolling our neighborhoods. But for the last several years, we've been focused on other agendas other than taking care of those basic services. So what I want to do as mayor is get the city back to making sure we provide very high quality basic services and that we provide them to all neighborhoods throughout the city of Houston.
Now, as a focus, as what you feel like is something that you could accomplish, what do you see as the biggest issue or challenge facing Houstonians today?
So the biggest problem we have are our finances. We have an incredible increase in revenue that's occurred in the last 6 years. In fact, revenues are up $1 billion from 6 years ago. Yet we haven't balanced the budget in any one of those 6 years. We added more debt in the last 6 years than we've ever added before. We have deficits as far off into the future as we can project. And the city government tells us over and over the reason this is because we have this property tax cap. In 2004, the citizens of Houston amended the charter. It was a voter initiative that said that city council cannot raise property taxes by more than 4.5% a year without getting the voters' approval. And my opponent in this administration has talked about how they can't live with that and how they want to raise your property taxes by more than 4.5% a year. I'm opposed to that. We have $1 billion in new revenues in the last 6 years. The city needs to live to learn within its means just like the rest of us do.
Fiscal responsibility is what you're saying.
Correct.
So let me get this straight. So there is a hard cap on property tax, and your opponent is proposing to raise the cap, and you're opposed to raising it.
Well, he says he wants to modify the cap. Now, and when I say, does that mean you're going to raise it? No, I just want to modify it. So this is political speak. This is what career politicians do. They try to put it in a pretty wrapper for us. But at the end of the day, what it means is you're going to pay more when you write your check for the property tax at the end of the year rather than less.
Well, you brought up the issues with debt with the city and how to balance the budget, and all of that ties into, of course, pension, which is a big issue at this year's election. Now that the city of Houston is now over $20 billion in debt.
Correct.
And $5 billion is in unfunded pension and health benefits to employees. How do we work with that? I mean, that's a huge number.
Well, we have the old style defined benefit pension plans where we put some money in a trust, the employees put some money, and then we try to guess at what it's going to take to make payments off in the future 20 or 30 years from now. You know, private industry got out of these plans 2 or 3 decades ago because you never really know what the cost of them are. We run actuarial studies to try to guess what the costs are, but they're almost always underestimated. And so over a period of time, we gradually worked ourselves into this huge debt because we keep underestimating the amount the plans cost and not putting enough money to fund them. So what private industry did 2 or 3 decades ago is they went from defined benefit to defined contribution plans. I don't think you can make that change for existing employees because these people came to work for us and we made them a promise and we need to live those promises. But it's irresponsible to continue to making these pension promises to new employees when we know that this model doesn't work anymore. And so fundamentally what we need to do is move from defined benefit to defined contribution plans, just like everybody else in the world has.
Well, it's an issue that's been years in the making. Every administration has kicked the can down the road, and you actually want to be able to fix it now, which would be painful in the beginning, but it will be better for the future. And speaking of fiscal responsibility, that also ties in to having more officers on the streets to control crime. How do you plan to battle crime and catch the crooks?
So we absolutely need more police officers, but here's my problem. In the last 10 years, the police department budget has doubled from $450 million to $900 million, and yet we have fewer police officers today than we had 15 years ago. That kind of management doesn't work for me. And I think there's a number of things we need to look at. Certainly the pensions are part of this problem, but there's also those things like we continue to run a crime lab when Harris County already has a crime lab. We have 38 officers on a mounted patrol downtown. Now look, this is Texas, we all like our horses and all that, but you know, seriously, a mounted patrol in a 21st century police force, I don't know if that makes any sense anymore. You know, and we're doing just a terrible job of enforcing our criminal laws. Last year, we only solved 6% of the burglaries that were committed in the city. Now, you know, I'm guessing that when there's a 94% chance of getting away with a burglary, that you're more likely to go out and be a burglar. We only solved 15% of the robberies, only 24% of the rapes. We had 600 unsolved rape cases last year. You know, frankly, I'd rather have those 38 guys that are riding around on horses downtown out trying to catch some of those rapists.
Your numbers are definitely right on point. You're right that it's a $900 million budget for HPD, and we increased the revenue cap by an additional $90 million, allowing the city to do that.
Yeah, in 2006, we increased the revenue cap. We modified the property tax cap to add an additional $90 million. So it's been going up 4.5% a year, plus that extra $90 million. And let me tell you how many new police officers we got for that $90 million. 0.
Well, when we know that we have 300 fewer officers than we did 10 years ago, it would double the budget that we have to be able to find to resolve the issue.
I'm guessing that most of your viewers who are business people would have managed that budget better than we've managed it at the city.
You understand how to manage city management. A lot of us know that you ran the city of Kemah. In Clear Lake area, there's a lot of Asian American immigrants because of NASA, high tech. So some of us would be familiar with you. But in Houston, we're a city built on diversity, and you want to be a mayor for all of us. For most Asian Americans, a lot of us are business owners because of not being educated here. A lot of our concerns would be to how to grow the economy, how to fix the streets. I mean, all of this ties down to fiscal responsibility, is how do you manage and balance a budget? How would you plan to fix this? I mean, you see the streets out there, something needs to be done, Bill. So what could you do for us?
Well, for probably the last 3 administrations, what we've been doing is taking money that we historically spent on infrastructure and using it to balance the general fund budget. And again, the pensions is a big part of this issue, but there's other things just like, you know, the average personnel cost at the city per employee, and this is salary, insurance, retirement, everything, is $98,000 a year. I mean, how many of your businesses out there, folks, have an average personnel cost of $98,000 a year? Most of us couldn't stay in business with that kind of average personnel cost. And so this is really about making sure that we're managing this like a business. And when we do that, then we're going to free up money to be spent on infrastructure, things like the potholes, making sure we don't have these water leaks. I mean, how many times do you drive around Houston and see the water leak with just water gushing out? And of course, we're paying for all that water. And so we've got to get back to not just spending money, but investing money.
So you're saying that the rebuilt Houston pay-as-you-go provisions are not effective?
No, it was a terrible idea. Pay-as-you-go is, the theory of pay-as-you-go is that we're going to wait and build these things so we don't have to pay interest on bonds to build it. But the problem is the inflation rate for construction is almost always higher than the interest rate at which we borrow money at the city. Now, because of the federal tax exemption, we get to borrow money at a very cheap rate, normally around 4%. So inflation for construction normally goes up higher than that, so it actually costs you more to delay these projects to build them. And then there's another cost to the citizens that's not reflected on the city's books, which is that you have crummy streets, so you're blowing out your tires, you're knocking your front end out of alignment, or your house is being flooded. And so this idea that we're going to pay as you go and wait and save up until we can get these projects is just not a good idea. Plus, excuse me if I'm a little skeptical the money will actually be there if we try to put it aside, because, you know, this money was supposed to be in a lockbox. We've been paying, by the way, we've been paying an extra $100 million a year for the last 5 years. All that money is supposed to go into a lockbox to work on our streets. Anybody out there think our streets are better off than they were 5 years ago? I don't think so. And part of the reason is we're now paying for 550 full-time employees out of that supposed lockbox, and about a third of those employees have desk jobs down at City Hall.
it is sold as a dedicated revenue stream in that lockbox to fix the roads. But instead, it's being wasted on, well, not wasted, but it's rediverted to the, like you said, the general
fund. Correct.
So that is not the purpose of having Rebuild Hill.
And it was not what any of us thought was going to happen on this program when we voted for it.
And once again, we're going to go down to the key part that every voter, every Houstonian wants to know is, how do we maintain the economy knowing that oil and gas industry is going to be in a little bit of trouble? Oil prices are going to rebound in the short term. What could you do to bring in more business, bring in more investments and build, especially to Southwest Houston, which is the international zone right here?
Right. So I think we do need to work on diversifying our economy. I think the lowest hanging fruit on this is the Texas Medical Center. We need to become the Silicon Valley for biotech for the world. I think that's well within our grasp to do that. We've already got a great start. Biggest clinical base. We don't have as much research. We don't have big pharma here. We don't have some of these things. The Texas Medical Center has brought in a new director named Robert Robbins, who's a world-class medical academic who's trying to do this. And the city needs to be able to do everything we can possibly do to support that effort. I think the commercialization of space down in the Clear Lake area especially is another opportunity. And then I think generally, we are the most diverse city in the United States. Any nationality, any faith group, any ethnic group, we've got 10,000 of them someplace in Houston. And that is a tremendous benefit for us when we're trying to go out and solicit international business, because wherever we go to solicit that business, we have some people from that culture or that country, that faith community, and Houston who can tell the story about how great a place Houston is to live, how it has such a wonderful open heart, how this is the ultimate meritocracy, that we take in people from all over the world, and if you have a contribution to make, there's a place for you in Houston. You know, Bob Lanier used to say that the thing that makes Houston different than other cities is that here nobody cares where your daddy's from or who your daddy is, and I think that's so true.
And Houston is you can achieve your American dream in Houston. We don't have the blue bloods. We're not a closed society. Everyone has a chance, and that's what the American dream is all about.
And listen, I lived that in my life. My dad was a union pipe fitter down in Galveston County. I worked my way through the University of Houston. When I was in law school, I had my own small business that I ran while I was going to law school. And when I got out, there were all these incredible opportunities in this city for me, and that's why I love the city so much. We really are America's city of opportunity, really the world's city of opportunity, if the truth be known. And it's been demonstrated by the fact that so many people come and make this their home. You know, a lot of people come here for an education or for a temporary job and ended up staying because it is this wonderful place to live.
So that makes it easier for you to relate to a lot of Asian Americans, also to immigrants, because of the fact that you did grow up blue collar. You know that education was the key to get out of poverty or whatever it is to take the next step. So education, and you've owned your own business, so you understand how hard it is to navigate the bureaucracy of the city itself.
That's terrible, yeah.
So you want to facilitate and make it easier for business owners to maintain and to have greater success.
Let me also say that something else I did was I chaired the Interfaith Ministries organization for a number of years. And this is a place where all the great faith traditions in the city come together. And what we try to do there is build bridges between the communities. And I think it's been a very successful program. And we certainly had many Asians serve on that board from the various faith traditions that come out of Asia. And I went off and got my buddy Charles Foster to follow me as the chair. And of course, a lot of Asians, and especially Chinese, know Charles and his wife Lily. And so I have had a lot of contact with this community, have a real heart for it. And I'm looking forward to working with all parts of Houston once I become mayor.
And the Asian community do support candidates that spends time to focus on our issues. So what is your vision for engaging Asian American for admission to the city, and whether there's any leadership positions or that you could consider that you would commit to maintain diversity in City Hall?
Yeah, so our City Hall needs to look like our city does. From top to bottom, it needs to have people that look like our city looks like. And that's important not only from just a fairness standpoint, but it's also important because then people believe in the city government. And when people from other parts of the world come here to see our city, and they see that our city government reflects the diversity of the city, then they know this really is something we believe in. I ran a law firm for a long time, and we were regularly recognized as the most diverse law firm in the state of Texas. And that's what we found in a microcosm there, and I think it's true for the city of Houston.
Now, Bill, you told me a story right before we got on about visiting China, Hong Kong in 1993, I believe.
Right.
It's more than 22 years ago.
Yeah.
So you went very early. Some of us Asian Americans are born here. Some of us have never even been to China. And you spent a lot of time there. I mean, you stayed there for, what, 2-3 weeks? That's a long time.
Yeah, so I had some Chinese clients at the time, and they were in the fur business. They would buy furs in the Pacific Northwest. They took them to China, manufactured fur coats that they then sold in Japan. That was their business, and they were very successful at it. And I represented them here in the States on some of their business. And so they invited me to go to China with them, and we spent about 3 weeks. We spent about half the time in Beijing and about half the time in Kowloon. And what I was telling you about is I thought, well, you know, it'd be nice to be able to speak a word or two of Mandarin. So I went out to Rice and took this cram course in Mandarin for 6 weeks. I was wholly unsuccessful in the effort to learn Chinese. It's a very difficult language, I think, for someone who doesn't grow up around it. You know, the intonation was what I could never get down, so I was always using the wrong intonation and using the wrong word. And I got into several embarrassing situations that I told you about before.
There's a lot of words there. Well, Russian and Chinese are the two hardest languages to learn, but
Yeah.
you still took 6 weeks you're dedicated to trying to learn it. Like I said, your Chinese might be better.
I remember ni hao, zai jun.
You got this. That's good. That's perfect pronunciation. Your Mandarin might be better than a lot of our second generation Estonian Chinese Americans
I don't know
too.
about that.
But Bill, we really do appreciate you coming in. We understand, we support the candidates that support our community. You understand our community. You know that diversity is key to Houston. We're built on diversity. And you know that international business is good for all of us. So we do wish you luck, and we want to thank you again. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Good
it.
seeing you, Bill.
Nice being with you.
Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to watch us again on 55.5 ITV.